10.4 is talking about this thing called the slope of a line. And so we have a formula here. We're going to start off with the formula right away, and we're going to figure out how to use it. And it says the slope of a line passing through points x1 and y1, and x2 and y2 is given by this formula that we have right here. Now, the reason we're using x1 and y1 and x2 and y2 is because we have 2 points, okay? So if you remember, every point is always going to be in the form x comma y. So since I'm looking at my first problem here, it says find the slope of the line through the points -2, 3, and 4, -1. Since -2, 3 is my first point, I'm going to think of this as my x1 and my y1. And I'm going to think of 4 and -1 as my second point, so I'm going to think about that as my x2 and my y2. Excuse me. So now all I'm going to do here is I'm going to plug into my formula m equals y2. Well, y2 is my number -1 minus y1. y1 is my number 3. And the bottom part says x2. Well, 4 is my number x2 minus x1. Well, -2 is my x1. So I'm going to go ahead and continue here. -1 minus 3 is a -4. 4 minus -2 becomes 4 plus 2, which is 6. And then I can go ahead and I can reduce that fraction. I can divide them both by 2, and that'll leave me with a -2 over 3. Okay, so I have the slope of the line. Now, I want to figure out what the slope is really telling me. So it says to find the slope of the line, which we just did. Now it tells me to graph the line. So let me get my different color here, okay? Let me go ahead and plot my points. So the first point is -2, 3. That means I'm going to move to the left 2 and up to 3. So there's my first point. My next point is 4 and -1. So I'm going to move to the right 4 and then down to 1. Okay. And then all I want to do, I'm going to see if I can do this since I'm doing it on my computer screen. I want to go ahead and draw the line that connects those 2 points. There we go. All right. So there's my line. Now, a lot of times when we have the slope, what we refer to the slope as is we call it the rise over the run. What the slope is going to tell me, how do I move from one point to get to the next. So I'm going to start right here at my point. Since my top number is a -2, instead of me rising -2, since it's -2, I'm going to go down 2 spaces. So I'm just going to count 1, 2, and then since my bottom number is a +3, I'm going to move 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. And if you notice, that's another point on my line. I can do that again. From this point now, I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2. I'm going to move to the right, 1, 2, 3. And now I'm at our point that we had before. And you can continue to do that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And all the slope is telling you is how do you move from one point to get to the next. It's sort of like directions. Go down 2 to the right 3. Down 2 to the right 3. And every time you do that, you'll end up with a point on our line. Okay, so the next problem I have here is telling me to do the same thing. It's telling me to find the slope of the line through these 2 points and then to graph it. My first step is I'm going to go ahead and write down my formula again. Oops, let me get a better pen. Let's see, okay. So my formula was m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so again, since this is my first point here, I'm going to call that one x1 and y1. I'm going to call this one here x2 and y2. So again, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in my formula. My number y2 is my number 5, minus my number y1 is the number 1. x2 is the number 3, minus x1 is the number -2. So we'll go ahead. 5 minus 1 is 4. 3 minus a -2 becomes 3 plus 2, which is 5. All right. So remember, we call the slope the rise over the run. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here, I want to go ahead and plot my points. So negative 2, 1 would be from the middle. I need to go to the left 2 and then up to 1. So there's my first point. 3, 5 means I'm going to go to the right 3 and then up to 5. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the line that connects both those points. Okay, so now what I want to point out is I'm going to go ahead and use the slope to find my additional point. So I'm going to rise, so I'm going to go up 4 spaces. So we're going to count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to run to my right 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So again, I went up 4 and I went to the right 5 spaces. So one thing I want to point out, I'm going to go back to my other problem before, but I want you to notice something here. The slope of my line is positive. It's positive 4 over 5. And as I read my line from the left to the right, this way, my line is going up. If my line is going up, I'm going to have a positive slope. If you recall the problem that I did before, and I'm just going to come back over here, if you look at my slope here, we have a negative slope. As I go from the left to the right, our line is going down. So if I have a negative slope, my line will go down. If I have a positive slope, my line will go up. All right, so the next problems that I have here say to use the graph to find the slope of the line. Okay, so my first step is I'm going to write down, my letter M. Now, just like we were talking about before, we said that if our line goes down, our slope is going to be negative. And if our line goes up, our slope is going to be positive. So in my first problem here, this problem, I notice that my line is going downward because as I go from the left to the right, my line is coming down. Okay, so I'm going to pick 2 points. So we already have nice 2 points right here, this one here and that one there. So let's take a look. We're going to be moving down. All we're going to do is count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 spaces down. 1, 2, 3 to the right. Since I'm going down 4 spaces, it's a negative 4. Since I'm moving 3 to the right, it's a positive 3. And again, just to let you know what I did, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So remember, it's rise over run. Okay? Let's take a look at the next problem. Let me just kind of shift it down a little bit. All right, first thing I notice about this line, as I go from the left to the right, this line here is going up. So my slope is going to be positive, okay? So I'm going to count how many spaces from here to get to here. I'm going to count how many spaces up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 spaces up. 1, 2. 2 to the right. The rise over the run. Okay, let's take a look at this next one here. Very much the same way. I like these problems because all I need to do is count. This line again is going up. So again, I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So up 5. 1, 2, over 2. Let's try the one over here. Again, I notice that this line here is going down, so that's telling me already that my slope is going to be a negative number. How many spaces down do I need to move? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So a negative 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to the right. All right, let's take a look at this next problem here. Now, first thing I notice is that this line is not going up. The line is not doing this. And the line is also not going down. So we said that if our line was going up, our slope was going to be a positive number. And if we said our line was going down, our slope was going to be a negative number. Since our line is neither going up or down, it cannot be positive and it cannot be negative. The only number that's neither positive or negative is 0. Now I want you to remember something. This is what we call a horizontal line. So whether that line crosses there at -1, or that line crosses at -4, or if that line would cross at +5, all of those lines there would have a slope of 0 because they're horizontal. They're not going up, they're not going down. Now, the next one that I have here, I would look at this one and I would say, well, hold on, is that line going up or is that line going down? And I would say, yes, it's going both up and down. Well, if it's going both up and down, it would have to be both positive and negative, and that's not possible. So we say about any vertical line is that the slope is always going to be undefined. So whether that vertical line passes here at 2, or if it were to pass at 5, or if it were to pass at -3, all those lines there would have an undefined slope. All right, so the next couple of problems here say, let's find the slope of each line. And we're going to be using this thing called the slope-intercept equation. We'll be talking about this form more in 10.5, but for now, the form that we're going to be trying to get all our lines in is going to be in this form, y equals mx plus b. So when we get into that form, whatever number my m is, that's going to be my slope. Okay, so my first thing here is I'm going to look at this problem that I have here, and I want to compare it to that equation. And the question that I want to ask is this equation here already in that form right there? And it appears as if it is because the letter y is by itself. So if I do a little stare and compare, m, which if you notice here is the number in front of the x, my m here would be the number -2. And so all I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to find the value of m. That's the slope of my line. So my slope here would be -2. All right, now let's try another one. Let's try this one here. And so my first question is that equation already in my y equals mx plus b form? And I notice it isn't. I need to get the equation solved for the letter y. I need to get it so that it looks like this, y equals mx plus b. So I want to move my 5x over. And since it has a minus in front of my 5x, I need to undo it by putting a plus 5x here and by putting a plus 5x there. So when we do that, those 5x's are going to cancel, and I'll be left with y equals 5x plus 10. And now I notice that this equation here looks just like this one. So here I would say, well, my m is going to be 5. All right, let's try the next one that we have here. Oops. Let me come back up. Here we go. Okay, so the next one I have here is 3x minus 5y is equal to 1. Okay, so remember, I want to get my equation in the form y equals mx plus b. Oops, plus b, not 5. There we go. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and minus 3x on both sides. Minus 3x on both sides. So those are going to cancel. That's going to leave me with a negative 5y equals a negative 3x plus 1. Now, I want to get the y by itself. So I have that negative 5 in front of it. And it's being multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5 all the way across. So these here will cancel. Now, if I look at this part here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So that's 3 over 5x. A positive divided by a negative is a negative, and I can't reduce that, so that'll just be negative 1 over 5. And so since my equation here is now in my form y equals mx plus b, I can say that my m is 3 over 5. All right, let's try the next one. Okay, so if you notice my equation here, it's just x equals 1. So what I want to remind us of is, what would the line x equals 1 look like? So if I were to just kind of make a quick XY axis here, so there's my X, here's my Y, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let me get a different color for my pen. Let's go with green. Okay, when X equals 1, that would be right here. But remember, I need to draw a line. And if I'm going to draw the line X equals 1, that is a vertical line. And if you remember from a few minutes ago, we said that any vertical line was always going to have a slope that would be undefined. So let me scroll down a little bit further, and let's see if we can do these next couple. All right, so the next one here is X equals 2y. So again, I want to get this in the form y equals mx plus b. So which means I'm solving it for the letter y. So if I want to get the letter y by itself, I'll go ahead and just divide both sides by 2. And these will cancel. That'll give me y equals, I can think of the number in front of that x as a 1. So that's 1 over 2 with an x. All right, so now my m here is just 1 over 2. All right, now my next one here is y equals negative 3. So again, the first thing I notice is that I don't have an x in this problem. So again, I want to take a look at what would the graph of y equals negative 3 look like. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now, when y equals negative 3, if that's my x-axis and that's my y-axis, negative 3 would be down here. So I would mark that point. But I need to draw a line. So when y equals negative 3, this is a horizontal line going left and right. And again, if you remember from a few moments ago, we said any horizontal line is always going to have a slope m equals 0. All right, so let's take a look at this last problem here. It says this graph approximates the number of U.S. households that have televisions Y in millions for the year X. Okay, so what we're trying to do here, we're trying to find the rate. Okay, we're trying to find the slope of the line. So let me go ahead and write down my formula again. M equals Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. So again, I'm going to call this one here X1 and Y1. We'll call that point there X2 and Y2. Okay, now I'm just going to plug in. So Y2 would be 115.6 minus Y1 would be 108.4. X2 would be the number 2013, and X1 would be the number 2003. So now all I need to do is subtract. Let me grab my calculator here. Okay, so let's take 115.6 minus 108.4, and that's given me 7.2. Oops, 7.2. Okay, now on the bottom, 2013 minus 2003, that's a total of 10. If we divide that out, that should give me something like 0.72. And we're done.